Unleashed. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Matt Demaz here, and welcome to episode 7 of the Matt Demaz Unleashed podcast. Whew, here we are. New year, new me, or whatever other bullshit some of these sociopaths want to tell themselves before they go back to being the same assholes they've always been. But Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's kind of weird that I didn't imagine that I would see in the new decade with talks of World War III. I mean, Jesus Christ. Everyone's fucking memeing this World War III shit, and it's just making me just not give a fuck at this point. My energy levels are so low after reading all this shit. Same with people fucking cracking jokes about the Australian bushfires. Yeah, let's make fun of fucking, 20 plus people dying and hundreds of homes being burned down. Yeah, that's a perfectly acceptable form of, social interaction between one another online. You know, that's just fucking fantastic. Anyway, I'm not even gonna bother touching on this shit. I just could not be fucked. But, one thing I will, touch on for the majority of this podcast will be something called, professional wrestling. Or more specifically, WWE's Attitude Era, wrestling stuff that happened, which is arguably the best era period in WWE's history. Well, actually, professional wrestling in general was really good in the late 90s. Just so much shit was happening. I mean, I'll always respect the 80s and all that, but let's be real. Throughout the mid-90s, shit was getting really stale really quick. And so basically what WWE had to do was change their format and go into a more edgy direction. Because, I mean, it was, during the late 90s, everything was starting to go into a new direction. Had the rise of anime being popular, you had the whole Toonami thing, everyone trying to have a bigger attitude, and, in the music business, all these rappers coming out and releasing these insanely explicit albums, and in general, the world was starting to change. There was a cultural revolution going on, and what WWF at the time wanted to do was get with the times, more or less. I mean, Vince McMahon, he made a promo in late '97 saying that he was rolling out this new format, and you could see some of this format starting to be rolled out a lot earlier than that. For example, actually, a lot of fans have argued what was the exact moment the Attitude Era started. And, people were saying it's when it was after WrestleMania, I think it was 13. It was, where, Stone Cold got, busted open and sharpshooted into unconsciousness by Bret Hart. Some people say it was the whole Brian Pillman's got a gun thing. Some say it's when Bret Hart went up and started cussing like a sailor. This is bullshit. Goddamn. Some people say it was when the logo got changed at Survivor Series 97. I think that was the first time they used the new scratch logo. But, for me, it's the Attitude Era started, I would say it really started after WrestleMania 13 when Austin was really starting to grip onto his Stone Cold character and really start, getting into people's faces, yelling at them, cussing, and doing crazy shit like throwing the Intercontinental belt over a bridge, that sort of shit. When things started to really get crazy, when Kane got introduced, when the Undertaker was doing his whole I don't think he was doing it. I think the crazy shit Undertaker was doing was the next year in late '98 with the whole embalming Stone Cold. I mean, Jesus Christ, that shit still terrifies me whenever I go back and watch it. Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. The rabbit hole of the Attitude Era, man, it goes deep. It goes really deep. And I'm not afraid to admit this, but I do feel like they did go too far on numerous occasions when it came to taste. For example, I don't think the whole with the setting the quote unquote dead bodies on fire, or chokeslam, or whatever happened with Kane where he got chokeslammed into his mother's coffin or something with the bones poking out and worms all over, and I'm like, Yeah, nah, I don't think that was that was necessary. But I'm not saying I got an issue with it. But imagine being a little kid and seeing that. It's like, ugh, it's. I do think that was a little bit too far, but I don't think they really knew what. I do feel like they pushed the envelope just to push it. So, they tried the most outrageous shit they could when they started. But, yeah, like in late 97, when the format was just starting to kick in, it did still feel really shaky. Like the production, it felt really like raw. Like, how wrestlers would come in, like a little, the splash screen titling their name and everything would just appear and then disappear. I mean, throughout the next year and the year after, 99, Raw felt they really got the hang of it and did like fade in, fade outs for wrestler title name cards or whatever they're called. And yeah, the production definitely got a little bit better than it was. But yeah, 98 was such an odd year for wrestling in WWE. That was it just felt really, it did feel kind of shaky, just a little bit. I mean, they were rolling out all of these new gimmicks and all this crazy storylines, and the wrestlers were like still acting the way they did the previous year. So like, you didn't have like really good like catchphrases. I mean, The Rock's mic work in 98 wasn't really the best until later that year, where he really started to get the hang of it and started to bring out the, jabroni gonna turn that sideways and all that shit. I feel like in early 99, I think that's when WWF really started to grasp on what they wanted to really get the hang of the new format. And all those Raws from late 98, 99, they just felt so tight. Like, you see all the bright colors of the arena, the red and the white, and it just felt so visually pleasing to look at. And, it just felt really tightly written. And I feel like they really, so... I don't know. I just really enjoy watching it, like especially the late 98 stuff and the 99 stuff. 2000 stuff, I believe, had some of the best pay-per-views ever. I mean, because when I was a kid, I grew up watching. Well, I didn't really know much about wrestling back in 2000. I think I did watch some stuff here and there. Like my next door neighbors were huge wrestling fans back then, and I initially learnt about WWF from them. Like they were saying, "Hey man, check this out." And because I was into Pokemon and gaming at the time, I wasn't really trying to. Well, I did have cable TV. I did get glances of the wrestling stuff that was going on, but I didn't really pay attention to it. But when my next door neighbors introduced it to me, they're like, "Hey man, check this out. It's wrestling." I'm like, "Oh," and he showed me. I think it was the Raw episode where Right to Censor came out, and they tombstoned China, I think it was, or something. They spiked tombstoned her or something. I don't know what they pile drived her and broke her neck. And then they said to me, it's not, don't worry, Matt, it's not real. It's all scripted. And I'm like, so it's not real? They're not really hurting themselves? And he said to me, nah, it's all fake. And then I sat down there and watched a couple of episodes, and then I saw a flashback of the 1998 King of the Ring, where Mankind got thrown off the top of the Hell in the Cell by the Undertaker. And I'm like, is that not real as well? From what I heard, he actually dislocated his shoulder, bruised his kidney, and all sorts of shit. So, it's like... And so he explained to me, yes, there are obvious serious risks involved, because they do give warnings before each episode that do not try this at home, blah, blah, blah. And, well, that's what they were doing when they were rolling out a new format. They were touting the wrestlers as genuine athletes, which they are. And it wasn't really called professional wrestling anymore. It was called sports entertainment. And it makes sense. I mean, it's really just sports entertainment. It's just people... It's like watching a movie. That's what I felt like when I was watching it. I'm like, man, this is so... I mean, it's like soap opera cheesy levels of... It's like soap opera levels of cheese, but it like captivates you. You can't stop looking at the wrestlers when they're cutting promos. You're just completely fixated on them. It's so captivating. And even going back and watching like the Attitude Era stuff now, I still feel like it's really captivating. And, it's... I just don't think wrestling could ever be like this ever again. I think as soon as they went from the ruthless aggression era to the PG stuff, I kind of feel like it did lose its shimmer. WWE did lose the shimmer. A lot of people argue as soon as WWF changed their logo to WWE or whatever, that's when the Attitude Era ended. Or I think when WrestleMania 17 is arguably when it ended as well, when Stone Cold turned heel. And well, I mean, he was already kind of a heel. He was like half face, half heel, if you can believe that. And like he was over as a heel early on as well, which is hilarious. And they just slowly turned him into a good guy, like an anti-hero. And it's just amazing how they managed to pull that off. But like as soon as Stone Cold shook hands with Vince, everyone was like, all right, that's the end of the Attitude Era. And I would somewhat agree with that, although the wrestling format, like the way the show was presented, was still pretty tight in 2001. And even 2002, I actually really enjoyed watching that stuff, because that's about when I started to really get into it, when it used to be on TV a lot. And I played the wrestling games, WWF No Mercy, which came out in late 2000, but I still like playing that all the way to 2003, 4, 5, it was a great game. And playing the game so much when I was a kid and not really watching much of the product itself, it really just got me fixated on the stuff that happened around 2000, because I was so used to the gimmicks from that era. So I used to always go back and watch the 2000 Raws and see Right to Censor, see the Godfather Hose come out, Too Cool doing their dances and all that. It's just... It was a good time for wrestling, man. It was just people having a good time, It's just they were having really good fun with it, and it's as insane as the Attitude Era got, and there are some instances where I feel like they went too far, like when The Rock was hitting Mankind over the head with the chair like 20 times during that I Quit match at the Royal Rumble, I think it was 1999. Yeah, I don't think that was necessary, but I mean, people look back at that match with fondness as well as horror, so I mean, there's not really much you can do to change that. It happened. We just have to accept it. And yeah, I do feel like they did go too far when it came to stuff like that. And it's with the whole setting people on fire thing, it's like, oh, all right, let's settle down a little bit here. But I mean, people liked it. I mean, the fans ate it up back then. You look at these old videos of WWF from like 99, it's like a sea of friggin' signs in the crowd. Like, you don't even see that shit anymore. And it's all a flashbulb from all those cameras with the flashbulb things. Like, when wrestlers used to do moves, it used to be the sea of friggin' flashbulb. Every time someone did like a finisher, it was like woof, just lit up like a Christmas tree. I love watching that shit. It's so satisfying. You just don't see it anymore. Everyone's even got their camera phones, or it's just the crowds just feel so dead nowadays. And WWE as a product is a pretty embarrassing stuff, and I think. One of the reasons why these other promos are starting to rise up is just because of that fact. I mean, AEW right now is starting to rival, NXT in terms of ratings, which is hilarious. So, maybe this might be the Monday Night Wars all over again. Because that's the thing that happened in, like, 1996, 97, 98. There was a war between WCW and WWF for ratings, and during 96 or 95, WWF's ratings were just plummeting. So Vince took it upon himself to talk to his creative and be like, all right, guys, we need to amp things up a little bit, give wrestlers a bit of attitude. I remember Shawn Michaels saying something like that. Hey, let's give it a little bit more attitude. In like September 97, he said that to one of the wrestlers, I think, backstage. And I'd say that's officially when the Attitude Era started, when like they were like, yeah, we need to add some attitude and whatnot. But I do feel like, because 97 is such an interesting year, because there is glimpses of the Attitude Era elements there, as early as like the early 97, like with Bret Hart swearing uncensored on, live. And like, the Stone Cold and Bret Hart feud was so intense. Like, they were just going at each other. And like, the storylines were just getting more and more out there. Like with Brian Pillman, the born again Christian stuff. It's just, oh my god, he was the original lunatic fringe. Honestly, he was basically just a crazy guy Um, he played he played a great crazy person, and it's sad that he died because he was very good on the mic. It's yeah, and I mean, as great as the Attitude Era was, there was a lot of great people that ended up passing away during that time. Like Owen Hart tragically died, falling like a very high height onto from I think he was supposed to fly in to the arena into to the ring, and he fell off the thing that was holding him up, and he just died instantly, and that sucks. Everyone, I mean, I think at the time Owen wasn't really over that much because I mean, well, like when it I mean professionally, because everyone used to call him a nugget, just chant nugget, nugget, and that was funny. But I noticed as soon as Owen Hart passed away, everyone just instantly mourned him and showed their respect towards him. So obviously, when they were chanting nugget, they meant it with love. So that's the thing with wrestling in general. People don't really hate wrestlers. It's just the way things go with professional wrestling. You've got a heel, and you're supposed to boo him. You got a face, and you're supposed to cheer him. That's just the way it is, and um, it's that's just the way things went back then. And when your favorite wrestler dies, or even your most hated wrestler dies, you just feel really upset about it, and a lot of fans were really torn up about that. And I still kind of am, even though I wasn't really watching when he died. He was a great technician in the ring, very very talented. Made a few mistakes, yeah. I mean, he broke Stone Cold's neck for fuck's sake, but you know, he was a great guy, great wrestler. Sucks he died, but here's the thing though. With the whole Attitude Era, as when Vince was rolling out his new format, I do kind of find like he had to still take make some sacrifices to get past the censors. But for the most part, they kind of did just go all out with the most outrageous stuff they could think of, like the blow up dolls that Road Dogg and Billy Gunn would bring out, and the suck it thing with DX. It's still one of my favorite taunts in the history of the WWE. Just the two hands in front of your crotch, suck it. It's amazing. I used to one or two times WWE ever came to Australia. I think I went to a show with one of my friends. I was only like 15 years old at the time. This was like early 2005, I think. I think this was just before ECW One Night Stand happened, I think. And I watched a couple of wrestlers. I think it was Tommy Dreamer. Actually, Tommy Dreamer's come to Brisbane like a lot recently, which is interesting. He brought like his thing. There was like a wrestling thing or whatever, and yeah, it's I always felt like that these guys were just really, really good at what they did. They just made it look so easy. And I wanted to when I left high school. I actually wanted to be a wrestler. I was like, hey, I want to go to a school, go to like a AWA or something, and go into developmental and like be see if I can't get a job as a jobber. And I did do a couple of matches as dark matches, yeah, but it wasn't really for me. I just could not. Trying to sell a DDT isn't as easy as you think it is. Or I mean, the easiest bump in the world that you can do is a back bump. It's so simple. You just land on your back. That's it. It's when you start. It's when it comes to the pile drivers and all that where things can get messy, and there's risk of serious injury. And it kind of just crossed my mind, and I'm like, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to risk serious injury? I should just leave it to the people that can that can do that to themselves. I don't know if I could I don't know if I could see myself doing something like that, or I don't know. It just wasn't my thing. I just it just wasn't happening with me, and But yeah, I was still a fan of wrestling. I was still a huge follower of wrestling throughout like 2006, 7. But I guess I kind of fell off in 2007. I just stopped watching, I believe, because I think ECW was doing like a merger, and it was like, well, I wasn't really too interested in it, but I did like those matches with like what's his name? Big Daddy V, Viscera. I used to love watching his matches because he was so freaking massive. You know, he was huge, and like whenever he used to like just hit people, his whole body used to just ripple, and it was so satisfying to look at. Um, but yeah, speaking of Viscera, he was one of my favorite wrestlers, believe it or not. From No Mercy, I really liked his theme song. I used to like watching his matches just to hear his theme song, like the whole it's kind of like hip hop mixed with like gothic kind of vibes. It was pretty sweet. But apparently, here's the thing with Mabel Viscera, whatever you want to call him. I think the reason why he didn't get pushed that much during the Attitude Era is because he did some legit injuries to people, and a lot of people didn't appreciate that. Apparently, he was bad at protecting people. At least that's what I've heard from some interviews, and Viscera himself, when he did that shoot interview back in 2009, he said, yeah, basically he got punished for hurting the Undertaker, and the Undertaker had to wear that phantom mask or whatever because Viscera broke his orbital bone during I think it was a house match. I don't know, but yeah, you know, it's yeah, you know, the wrestling business was very cutthroat back then. I mean, if you couldn't cut the mustard, then you know you got pushed back, you got buried. There was nothing you could do. You know, the announcers would just completely ignore you, and that was the end of your career. But at the same time, it was one big brotherhood. You know, all these guys were friends. You know, well, most of them anyway. I mean, some people had heat backstage. You know, that's just the way it was. I don't know if it was if the heat was just for fun and games. It was just, you know, just fucking around trolling. But I think some people legitimately didn't like each other in the locker room. So, you know, there was always that would that thing to factor into it. You know, not just having heel heat, but actual like shoot heat. You know, it's completely different, and it can really fuck with your career and bury you pretty quickly. But yeah, look, I'm not trying to say that today's WWE is like just like the fucking worst thing in the universe, but I don't know. I just can't get into it. I watched this new storyline with whatever his name is, like cheating on his girl or whatever. It's like, guys, come on. This is fucking awful. You know, the storylines now are just so terrible. I mean, it's good to see The Fiend is back. Bray Wyatt's back as The Fiend. That's pretty sweet, but you know, I'm just not feeling it, you know, and the way that King and JR sold matches, the way they announced called matches was just so good. Like, whenever Kane would come out, JR would be like, oh, Hellfire of Brimstone, it's Kane, Big Ring Machine, you know, he'd just have a freaking orgasm. And, you know, nowadays, announcers just fucking just bellow out and shout and just be like, oh, he's gonna punch him, I don't know, it just doesn't feel the same as, like, you know, JR was such a good announcer. Like, it was just his voice, you know, it just worked. Like, he was just the Oklahoma guy, you know, the southerner, you know, being like, oh, it's a clothesline from hell. You know, it just worked. You know, it just worked. It fit the vibe, you know, and it was, it's hard to explain. But it's one of the reasons why everyone considers Jim Ross the best commentator, period, in wrestling. Just because of the way he used to just make these legendary calls, like seemingly some of the stuff he would actually just improvise, which is hilarious. Like, for God's sakes, he's broken in half thing. I think Jim actually went on the record saying he legitimately thought Mick Foley was dead. It must have been pretty scary. But you know, it's like, I just loved JR's authenticity, you know, like he would constantly go off the script, you know, and be like, you know, seriously guys, we need to get some help out here and whatnot, you know. It was just amazing. It was magical, and it just clicked with everyone. like, the Attitude Era just exploded, and it really fit in line with the whole cultural revolution that was going on. Everything was getting edgier, had the rise of anime, Pokemon, all this stuff that was coming out. You had music was getting more, like, brutal, like, and, like, rap music. I mean, people were starting to develop more of an attitude. Like, you had Eminem putting out Slim Shady LP and all that. And in general, the world was starting to get a little bit more, hip in a way, if that's the way to say. People were starting to get a little bit more, new school, and just, a little bit of have more rebellion. People in general were starting to rebel against society and whatnot, and it was a fun time, and it meant that people could do whatever they want with little to no consequence at the time. Anyway, I mean, the late 90s were definitely a different time. You could not get away with half the shit they did today. There's no way. I mean, with DX, like, with the whole fucking Triple H and X-Pac in full-on blackface, and Triple H with an afro, making fun of the nation. You could not do that today. If a wrestler dressed up in blackface on WWE TV, there would be riots, there would be cancellations, the show would get taken off the air, it would be just chaos. You cannot do that shit today. And I think that's one of the reasons why I do feel like people think today's product is just stale, boring, and it's just, and it really does reflect. I mean, if you look at the new video game, WWE 2K20, they didn't give a single fuck. Like, the game is a complete mess. The state of the brand in general is crumbling, and AEW might be what they need to get creative, to be like, all right, let's stop fucking around and let's, like, try to make some money here. We're losing attendance. People aren't showing up to events. We're losing merchandise sales. What the fuck is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. You guys need to bring back the attitude, get in touch with the youth, and stop fucking doing these ridiculous storylines that nobody wants to see. Be more natural. Just... And, people say to me, like, oh, Matt, they'll lose sponsors if they go back into a more, if they go back to TB14 or whatever they had before. But here's the thing. If people notice that they're attempting to change their format again, I guarantee you the vast majority of wrestling fans will swarm back to WWE. I don't think they would lose much money if they lost sponsors. The people would just be like, all right, we're going back to the late 90s, let's do it, and at least that's what I think. I don't know for certain that's what would happen, but I don't think it would be a bad reaction. People would obviously notice it and be like, holy fuck, they're going back to the bringing back some TB40 and shit, And I don't know why they just don't have I mean, they've got, like, SmackDown, they've got NXT, they've got Raw, they've got all these other shows. I don't know why they, if they didn't want to piss off sponsors for Raw and SmackDown, why didn't WWE just make a new show where it was like TB14, and just call it like WWE, I don't know, something edgy, like WWE Extreme or something like that. I don't know. It's just you got to be able to cater to everyone. There's guys like me that are used to the Attitude Era stuff, and we're sitting here just face palming at this bullshit that is Raw, these 3-hour Raws. There's segments from like 98, 99 that go for about 2 minutes, and they're about a million times better than entire 3-hour Raws that I've seen last year. That just shows you how low the company has sunk in terms of the quality of their product. And look, I'm not here to bury the WWE. I respect them as a brand, as a company. They do good work. The payouts are good. A lot of the wrestlers that work on the brand for the company, they make at least 6 figures. I don't think there's anyone that makes less than 6 figures, although there could be. But like, a lot of people get paid a lot of money. So WWF, he used to be like the king of the castle. He used to be like the ultimate, wrestling promo. It was number one. And I don't feel like it's that number one anymore. I mean, maybe financially it is, but creatively, no way in hell. There's so many other promos that do much better storytelling, much better wrestling, that's just the way it is. It's a sad fact, and I don't know. I mean, I've watched so many documentaries on the Attitude Era. I've read Mick Foley's, or I've heard Mick Foley's audiobook, Have a Nice Day, countless times. He's had such an incredible career, like, putting himself through such torment just to entertain people. It's just, wow. It's, yeah, it's incredible stuff. And, I do find wrestling fascinating. I've always loved it. But I do feel like the current product just isn't cutting the mustard. As Vince McMahon said, the whole good guys versus bad guys thing. Take your vitamins, say your prayers is definitely passe. And I gotta say to Vince now, I gotta tell you what, these fucking bullshit storylines that you've got going on now are definitely passe. About 15 years passe. But that's just my opinion. I mean, if you like the new wrestling, good for you. I mean, it's not freaking repulsively awful, but I'm just not feeling it, Myself and a lot of others feel the same way, so it's not like this is much of a hot take. It's just it's quite a relatable sentiment, unfortunately, but that's just the way it is. Wow. I could go on forever talking about wrestling. Like, it's always been something that I've been a fan of, I've always appreciated the art, the craft, and, it just sucks that WWE is nowhere near as good as it used to be. But there are other promos that are attempting to recapture that magic, like AEW. And actually, JR is doing commentary on AEW, which is hilarious. So it's more reason why I tune into that rather than watching Raw. I just really just do not give a shit about Raw at this point. It's just, oh my god, it's hard to explain my disappointment, but it's not like visceral hatred. Like, I don't hate WWE's product to the point where I'll like just read about it forever and ever, but I don't know, it's just not doing nothing for me. But yeah, I'll tell you what though, man. When I went, so I went back and, well, recently I went back and watched a whole bunch of the old school stuff, the 97 stuff, the 98 stuff, 99 stuff. And I did notice that The Rock was really starting to grasp onto his character in early 99 when he was starting to do like the whole Rudy Poo thing. It did take them a while for them to really get the new format down pat, because throughout lots of early 98, it did feel really shaky. I mean, they were trying the whole NWA thing, and it's like, yeah, no, it's seeing Barry Windham in the terrible shape he was kind of depressing. He had to wear a vest to cover up his belly. I mean, Jesus Christ. But it's funny because while Barry Windham got buried, Bradshaw ended up getting over as part of the Acolytes and APA. So, and now JBL is like celebrated as a huge success. So there you go. It's weird how that happens though. It's also depressing to see, like, wrestlers that are not bad wrestlers get buried like that, because Barry Windham was a great wrestler. Like, great wrestler. I just felt like Bradshaw just had more charisma, he just had the it factor. He had it, and it just worked out for him pretty well. But, there's a lot of other, the whole nation thing with Farouk and all that, I didn't like that. But, it was a terrible heel stable, but it was also a very important one, because if it wasn't for the nation, The Rock wouldn't have become who he is. A lot of people say that Farouk is the person that birthed The Rock, and I would agree with that. But I do feel like there are other factors as well, obviously, but yeah, the nation was a shit stable. I didn't really like it, but it was important. A lot of those wrestlers from that stable ended up with great careers. Mark Henry, he made a big comeback, in recent years, and what's his name? I didn't really hear much of D'Lo Brown, but he did get over, which is funny. Like late 98, early 99, he was over, even though he was like technically a heel, I think. I don't know. It's pretty funny though. But Who else was in? Yeah, Owen Hart even joined the nation. And here's one person that did get completely buried. Ahmed Johnson. He just completely vanished, which sucked. But I mean, he was a good wrestler. I liked him, and it was cool to see like big dudes, strong looking dudes in the competing. Um, Also, you guys like Ken Shamrock and Steve Blackman, and Al Snow, who were legit like fighters or whatever. They were in the UFC or whatever. I don't know if Al was was he in UFC? I think so. I can't remember. I think Steve Blackman and Al Snow were like friends or something. I don't know. But I know Al Snow trains wrestlers now in developmental, which is cool. So obviously he knows his shit. Otherwise he wouldn't be training wrestlers. But it's what's his name? Albert. Yeah, he does that too. I don't know if he does it anymore, but yeah, TNA, Test and Albert were a great tag team. I used to love watching them compete. I mean, they were technically like low to mid card, but they got a lot of TV time, and I really like watching Test. Test was such an underrated wrestler. He had a lot of strength. I mean, I've seen him lift Viscera and power slamming, which is pretty impressive. I've heard JR comment on the strength of Test when he lifted up the camera boom arm with Shane McMahon dangling from it after he fell. Fucking oh my god. Okay, so Backlash 2001. The whole Shane McMahon thing where he would take these huge dives and oh my god, the Jeff Hardys. There's so much stuff. There's so much to talk about. I could go on and on. The SummerSlam thing in 2000 with the ladder matches was absolutely insane. The Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys, Edge and Christian, the matches they used to have were just absolutely batshit. I mean, Jeff Hardy jumping at least 10 feet in the air, straight onto a table, and oh man, it was so cool. Basically, what these guys were doing was just taking what Mick Foley did with the Hell in the Cell, and just trying to be a little bit more crazy with it, but do it in a way that was safe. Well, as safe as it could be doing a moonsault onto a table, It's just, but yeah, I really like, the huge falls that people used to take, like with Shane McMahon at Backlash 2001, where he jumped literally, I'd say, roughly 50 feet onto and landed on top of Big Show or whatever, and literally cracked the ground underneath him with impact. Yeah, that stuff was insane to watch. And then Test lifted up the camera arm, and so that Shane would be the last man standing, and he won the match, which is hilarious. Shane McMahon, the Giant Killer. That was hilarious, that whole Giant Killer gimmick that Shane had, where he would read out like the fairy tale thing. Where it's just the little things like that all add up into such an amazing experience, and it's just something I really miss. So yeah, I do feel like the Attitude Era definitely helped the company. And I mean, like when ECW invaded WWF for the first time in like '97, somewhere in '97, I think Paul Heyman was like one of the guys that told creative in WWF, like, look, you guys need to switch things up. So I wouldn't be surprised if Paul Heyman was the reason why the Attitude Era even became a thing. I mean, man, Paul Heyman, man, he is a literal god. He's the reason why a lot of stuff happened, and I mean, it kind of sucks that ECW went the way it did, but went down in flames the way it did. But I mean, Paul Heyman definitely helped a lot of people make a lot of money, and it's just he's probably one of the more influential figures in wrestling. The ECW was basically coming out with this insane product. All these wrestlers were had these really aggressive attitudes, and I'm pretty sure Vince looked at it and was like, "Hey, let's just amp it up a little bit, bring some ECW talent into the roster, and try and bring out the tables and do what they do." And Lord and behold, the hardcore matches in the Attitude Era were some of the best matches ever. The stuff with fucking those hardcore matches that Crash Holly used to have in 2000, that were just so entertaining. Like the street fights and all that, and the stuff that when Cactus Jack debuted with, and Paul drove Triple H through a table. That was amazing to see that. You know, but yeah, Paul Heyman definitely was a very important influence on the company at the time. But yeah. So yeah, that's basically the gist of the Attitude Era. It was just a bunch of people, just amping things up a little bit, and just, it was good fun. It's kind of sad that it's gone now, but I mean, hey, times have changed, unfortunately, and we just have to accept that. But I mean, if the company decides to, bring back the Attitude, it might work. I don't know. Sponsors might get scared away, but the audiences might react to that in a positive way. Who knows? Anyway, that's basically all the wrestling out of my system. What else happened besides the World War meme fiasco? Nothing much. Oh yeah, I managed to get in contact with Mark a couple of days ago, which is good. Glad to know he's not dead. We might revive our podcast. Who knows? Give it a couple of weeks. When did I last talk to him? Yeah, on Saturday. So it was like 2 days ago. Yeah, we just talked about computers for a bit and water cooling. And honestly, I don't know if water cooling is worth it for my system. I'm better off just getting a Noctua, like something like an NH-U12A. Like, it's really good for for overclocking a 9th gen CPU like mine. So, I think the cooler I have right now is only meant for a 4th gen. I'm not sure. Probably why I'm getting heat issues. But anyway, I'll mess around with that. I wanted to reinstall the water cooler that I had laying around here that I just grabbed online, but I might hold on for that to now, because I don't like the idea of leakage, because, when water cooling fails, it fails catastrophically. When an air cooler fails, the worst thing that can happen is your computer turns off because CPU gets too hot, Water cooling, you got shit water on your motherboard, and it basically just kills the entire MOBO, which is not fun. But yeah, Anyway, that's basically it. I just caught up with Mark. My mum's been in hospital for a while though, which is unfortunate. She has this giant hole in her foot, and they had to fix that up. Diabetes basically just made it just rot away, which sucked. But hey, she's been in there for about 4 days now, I think. Actually, maybe longer than that. I think it was Friday she went in hospital, so it was like, how many days is that? Saturday, Sunday, 3 days, just about. Yeah, so, But yeah, that's pretty much it. Attitude Era, in a nutshell. The rabbit hole goes much deeper. Like, some of the storylines are pretty outrageously dark. But like the whole Undertaker thing, like with Stephanie McMahon. Oh Jesus. It's really really out there. But yeah, wrestling it was really cool, and somewhat still is, in my opinion. I like it. But hopefully WWE stops fucking around and steps their game up again. Maybe. We'll have to see. Hey guys, I'm pretty much done talking for today. I've got some other topics I want to dedicate podcast to, so stay tuned for that. But that's just basically my general feelings about wrestling. It's always been with me, nostalgia is a very powerful thing. You grow up watching something, you kind of just want to keep on following it, and as much as I don't like new WWE stuff, I try to at least occasionally revisit it, whenever I can. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, if you guys didn't notice, I've adjusted my gains on my mic, so my levels are a little bit quieter. If you guys should let me know if you like it or not. It's a little bit less ear rapey, which is good. So I might boost it a little bit in the next episode if I don't like it, how quiet it is, but we'll have to see. Anyway, guys, I'm pretty much done. Thanks for watching and listening, and I'll see you guys later. Take care.